In the case of the Caribbean, it is not just the well-being, it is also the entire economy that depends on the sea.
The issue of alternative energy is no longer a question of choice. We have to do it.
The issue that sets the Caribbean aside is that it consists of small island development states that show a very high degree of vulnerability. And that vulnerability can be caused by global change, by weather phenomena, but it is also caused by the sheer size of the countries and their financial situation when the rest of the world is affected by an economic crisis, as is the case right now. And the strain on these countries economically and development-wise can be quite substantial. And we can even find in these countries here pockets of poverty, which means that our overall policy of poverty reduction, growth, equity is very relevant in the Caribbean as well.
We've been a major partner of Caribbean Export since the institution was created. We're one of the biggest funding sources of that agency. We have very good interactions with them. We've, in the most recent package, increased their budget substantially.
We essentially do all the various promotions of exports, from cultural industries to professional services. We also have a very, very important scheme called the Direct Assistance Grant Scheme, which is providing direct assistance to firms and has been probably one of the most successful interventions that we've ever undertaken. The Direct Assistance Grant Scheme, it's called colloquially DAGS, is a scheme that was developed to give direct assistance, direct financial assistance to firms. And it has been so effective because most firms have issues, particularly in the early stages, getting the kind of access to finance in this region particularly, to enable their companies to go to the next level or to develop an idea that they have. Two of the companies that we had funded in the 9th EDF and also in the 10th, it turned out, wish to engage in increasing their capacity to be competitive and lower their costs using green initiatives, solar energy, solar power, and so on. But what we have decided over the last 2 years in assessing this situation is that, one, the issue of alternative energy is no longer a question of choice. We have to do it. It's not anymore something that is, we decide we want to or we don't want to. I don't think we have a choice. We have to do it. The second thing is that the biggest challenge facing most of our countries right now is the issue of energy cost. It is the single largest impediment to our competitiveness at a global level. For 3 projects we funded: Hotel Mockingbird in Jamaica, Ruth's Place in Antigua and Barbuda. The most recent has been the Mega Power Initiative. Hotel Mockingbird has been very eco-friendly and has actually created a system whereby they have a water system that's actually collecting and recycling water, in addition to establishment of the solar panels and utilization of full solar energy.
The thing I think that's most unusual about Hotel Mockingbird is that we were green in Jamaica before anyone else in Jamaica was talking about green or environmentally friendly business operations.
It is one of the few places that operates on a completely holistic principle. In 2012, Hotel Mockingbird Hill was elected as the most environmentally friendly hotel in the small hotel category.
Caribbean Export and the European Union have assisted us in allowing us to move forward with the things we knew we needed to do to become more energy efficient. Without the grant, I don't think we would have been able to manage it. Even though one had to pre-finance the grant, you managed to pre-finance in the knowledge that at the end of it, you will get 70% of your input back again, which you can then use for your operations. So it works out.
As being island states, we don't necessarily have all the resources that people in larger countries do. And in many other countries, governments give incentives, for example, for installing solar technology. We don't have the same playing field that people do in other countries. And hence the role of assistance provided from the EU and the Caribbean Export is very important in order for us to be able to become competitive and at the same time ensure the sustainability of our islands on which tourism is based.
The things that we have going on environmentally right now under this particular Caribbean Export Grant, the pond liner for our Garden of Wellness and the design for the brochure for the Garden of Wellness. We now have, thanks to the grant, 2 inverter ACs instead. And also because we are pumping our own water, we have also installed a bigger pump and a pump drive. We installed 2 300-liter solar water heating systems, and we were able to reinstall some panels that came down in the last hurricane.
Part of our philosophy, and which is very important to us, is to help the local economy and to source as much as possible from local suppliers within a radius of 100 kilometers. And we try and support cottage industries. Most of what we purchase is all homemade produce. The paper that we provide for our guests, the stationery, is from a local women's project from the neighboring village, where we give them our recycled paper and then buy back the paper, the handmade paper that they make as stationery for our guests. Gloria Dorman, who we affectionately know as Miss G, is the head of the project, so to say. She's the first lady who started out with this and then has trained the other women. So she is essentially sort of our main point of contact and heads the group of women. And she lives nearby. Initially, they used to work in the community-based office and have since got the support from USAID, now got very proudly their own little place. People living on island states are in a much more precarious situation than people living on larger continents. We have to contend with global warming. In the 20 years that we've lived here, we've already noticed a change in the climate here. And we cannot deny the results of science. There are people who might feel that human beings are, it's just a story. It isn't. It is a fact. It is a reality. And if we are to secure the future for further generations, for our children and grandchildren, and the well-being of further generations, we've got to be careful about how we conduct business, of how we live today.
The example of Ruth is fantastic on many levels.
She has been able to show very effectively, not just getting 1 grant, but getting 2, and becoming a virtual evangelist for the program. And her belief in it and her belief in spreading the word and making sure everybody knows has become such that we expect to get actually a record number of grant proposals from Antigua and Barbuda and possibly the rest of the OECS.
My name is Ruth Spencer. I'm from the Caribbean island of Antigua and Barbuda. I own a small guest house. I'm an entrepreneur seeking to provide the best service I can to the guests that come to the island. I open my doors to visitors coming to the island, but my electricity bills were eating up all of my revenue. Being approved of this grant and actually able to install it has said that a very simple person. I'm a simple small business. I'm not a Sandals. I'm not a big enterprise. I'm a single person running an enterprise. And I was able to get approval of the grant. I was able to get my system installed. I have people coming here wanting to see, really, something happening. There were some persons in Barbuda who heard about my success and began to make contact with me. And as a result, I reached out to the Barbuda Research Complex. A lot of communication started flowing. Mr. Mussington, Dr. Sophia Perkadaris began to saying, can you work with us? Can you provide information? Because we too are suffering the same thing. We have a lot of power outages out there, and we need something that can sustain our projects and our activities. So we got together through emails, and we began to get information flowing. And all this has started as a result of my work with and the approval of the grant from the Caribbean Export. I'm passionate about the sister island of Barbuda. Sometimes it's forgotten, sometimes we just said Antigua. We forget sometimes Barbuda exists.
We found that people tend to say, well, why do you support some of these small, initiatives? And we have found that sometimes it's in supporting the very small initiatives, like maybe Ruth's Place, that you have the kind of demonstration effect and ripple effect that we want to produce. Because success breeds success. If someone sees that somebody as small as Ruth is able to do this, then what about the rest of us? Why can't we do it?
We found out about Ruth Spencer and the fact that her venture, she was able to get funding from Caribbean Export and the European Union. And so that we felt was a route that we could use in terms of financing the work that we're doing in Barbuda. So it was a good study for us of having to be in contact with a person who has taken up the challenges, did something about it, got the funding, and is actually working and implementing. Taking into consideration that Barbuda, its highest point is just about 30-40 meters. When you superimpose on that a 2-3 meter rise in sea level, that's a significant portion of Barbuda's landmass which is going to be inundated. Now, it's not so much that it's going to sink, but what you're seeing presently, we're sitting on the shores of the Codrington Lagoon. It is a major wetland system which occupies up to a third of the Barbuda landmass. It means therefore that any rise in sea level or heavy rains will actually flood 2/3 of Barbuda.
I had the wonderful experience in Barbuda to put my handprints where the children had their prints. And you know what it said for me? We need to leave a good example. We need to leave a legacy that the generations that are coming can say our forefathers left a good legacy.
Megapower has been able to begin a process that people thought was impossible, which is the introduction of electric cars into the Caribbean using solar energy and solar carports.
We came back here for Luena. I grew up in Barbados in the 80s. I had not a care in the world. Times were spent running about the streets, going to the beach, and I want all of that for Luena. I want her to kind of experience the closeness of family, the ease of living. We don't have the heavy commutes. But the Barbados that I've come back to, the coastline is different. It has eroded, the beaches are eroded, and unless we make a concerted effort, where will Luena's children play on the beach? And for me, that's very important for her to understand that we have to make a concerted effort to be environmentally friendly, to conserve Barbados, to promote it for ecotourism, a green business economy, a place where people want to come to live, to visit, to do business, without wrecking the environment. In my good trawl through Caribbean Export Development Agency's website, I came across the Direct Assistance Grant Scheme, and I thought, perfect. Because since 2011, Simon and I had, been building on this concept of a solar carport, but, access to the funding to start wasn't exactly there. People generally would prefer to have money at the start. And I think, 10 out of 10 would say that. If you have access to funding at the very start, it does then run the risk for the EU and for Caribbean export, that you misappropriate the funds, you blow the funds on one aspect of the budget. I guess having it reimbursable, so having to reach into your pocket first, for sure makes you really think about what you're buying. And you definitely want best value for money because you are spending your money.
In terms of the actual engagement with the firms, the first thing is that it's a reimbursable grant, and that means that you have to put in before you get it back. So essentially, unless you're committed, you wouldn't qualify in the first place. The second thing is that it's a 70-30 split. So you're only funded up to 70% of the full cost of the program. So it also suggests that you take some ownership for what it is you're doing. We recognize that our grants are very small in the grand scheme of things. But it is those small grants that in a way enable very, very, very large amounts of leveraging to take place at a higher level. Once you are able to prove to a larger donor or a bank that you were able to fulfill these grant requirements, meet the obligations, and actually carry out the project that you said you were, you have increased credibility exponentially.
This grant has been a catalyst for us. It's allowed us, or rather it's given us credibility from being a startup, newly launched company to people seeing the structure, understanding our vision. Simon and I, we've become ambassadors for the Nissan Leaf and for electric cars. Wherever we go, we're stopped. People want to drive it, they want to ask about it, they want to see inside the engine, you know, the motor. The response, the public response has been tremendous. The launch and the grant has given people a visual representation of what Megapower is and what we want to do. And I think it's only a matter of time before we'll have a full network across Barbados of solar-powered electric vehicle charging stations. Our dream is for Barbados to be 100% electric vehicles on the roads.
You have countries that have really got their back up against the wall, like for instance Barbuda, that could suffer from the sea rises, that could even swallow a large part of the country. And that is not just Barbuda, other parts of the Caribbean, even parts of Barbados could suffer the same issue. So the marine environment is very close to my heart in the sense that it determines so many other social, personal and economic factors, perhaps even political factors, because when people's lives are being affected directly by a sea that is rising, then the political issues will very quickly come to the front as well. The sea is incredibly important for the well-being of the people that live near it. In the case of the Caribbean, it is not just the well-being, it is also the entire economy that depends on the sea. And we are not just talking about the coral reefs, whether they're bleached or not. We are not just talking about the fish for the fishermen. We're also talking about the whole tourism industry that depends on the quality of the beaches, that depends on the fish and the wonders of the sea.
If we could transform our economies to independent economies based upon the investment in alternative energies, the future is limitless.